People who love to look at or climb mountains, a variety to choose from. It has 53 mountain peaks over 14,000 feet.
Let's go. We're back. Bring the energy, boys. What's up, everyone?
High energy.
Welcome to another episode of the DNBA show. We're going to bring the Tuesday energy today. Hopefully a little better than last night. Directly above me, the bearded man with absolutely no plan. It's D-Line, a.k.a. Eric.
That's right.
Eric, what's up, man?
I have no plan. I don't know. How would I know what's up? I'm just going along for the ride.
To the right of Eric, it's a guy with a lot of plans and a lot of self-confidence. You know him as the usual host of this show. It's Adam Matas. Adam, what's cracking?
That's a good point. I do have a lot of confidence. Thank you for that.
And a man that frankly should have more confidence given just the hair, the shirt, everything he's bringing to the table today. Below Adam, it's Harrison Wind. Wind, what's cracking?
Thanks for the compliments on the shirt, but
Great
nowhere as dynamic as your shirt.
I used to think I would never run out of flower shirts, but quarantine is really pushing that to the limit. But we're not alone tonight. We do have a special guest. So, okay, let's go ahead and bring on in Dave DuFour, podcast host at The Athletic.
Yeah.
Dave returning to the show. I think he was with us on week one. Dave, what's cracking, brother?
Was that week one?
Of our show, I think.
Wow.
I think it was episode one, really.
Yeah.
I cannot believe you'll show your face here again, Dave, after that episode.
I know. I got beat on a trivia question, right? Have we ever talked about the fact? I mean, I talked to Adam a lot. Have we ever talked about the fact that I was mostly like a casual fan for like the 2000s?
No.
Oh,
but let's talk about it
or
now.
like of the show.
No, of the NBA, not of basketball. But
Yeah. When did it start for you, Dave? The life.
I mean, has it started? It's like just because my motivations are different, but I mean, even up until I don't know, I barely was casual during the 2000s, and then I think it was like 2008, 2009 or so that I came back kind of into the casual where. You know, all right, I'll watch most of the playoffs and then started watching some regular season and then was still really, really in that mode where I might watch a game a week during the regular season, maybe a little bit more until I started doing this 4 years ago. And I was like, okay, now I have to watch this until my eyes bleed.
What was it a player or a team or a moment that kind of turns you from a casual to someone who loves this stuff? Or
no. Well, so like I always loved basketball.
Sure.
Right. It was the what was the series? It was either the Brandon Roy series where he went off. Was it 2008 or 2009?
The game winner from so far behind the line. Did you ever try that shot? Like, it is such a athletic shot that he hits because it's like 50 feet long, and he shoots it like a jumper fading backwards.
I mean, guy was pretty strong.
I can't even make it to the rim on that. I remember trying
on a
it
regular
for a week.
jumper.
Yeah, like fading away at least.
I hope this cuts at your confidence.
It doesn't.
And it was the Celtics Bulls series where they had the overtime
Baby
games.
Bulls. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I really got into to those games, and then I was like, all right, well, the NBA looks better than it did in like 2003.
No.
Right.
For me, it was the
2004.
decision. That's what got me into the NBA. I was a college basketball guy before the
crazy.
decision. Yeah.
You know what?
Oh,
though,
really?
I have a theory. It wasn't either of those things for either of you guys. It was just how much more accessible the NBA became with social media, with the internet, and with the way that it was just the best league at throwing it at you so that you could be immersed in it 24/7. Because for me, I was into it for the Carmelo Anthony years, but it was different. Like I would watch the games, and then I'd move on with my life or whatever.
Right.
Now it's like, oh, I can be on Twitter. I can just read all these blogs and do all these different things. And the NBA has just been so good at hey, you don't have to leave the NBA. You can just be watching it all day.
Yeah, I didn't do any of that. Until I started covering the NBA, I didn't use Twitter. I used Twitter as an RSS feed. So but that's where I would get news. But I got into no discussion or anything like that. So for me, that came along with with this job.
But I'm telling you, but that's the same thing because you've been in this since like 2014, 15. You've been covering it, and Twitter came out 2007, but nobody was really on it till like 2009 or 10. So you weren't that far behind it. That's just all I mean is, you might have been third wave of this or whatever.
Sure.
But I feel like a lot of people got into it because you could do so many things with it. Whereas with the NFL in the early days and Major League Baseball, you couldn't do anything. They wouldn't let you share videos. They weren't like cool and have an online.
Baseball still won't, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot more room for the excess on the margins in basketball than these other sports. But I do want to move the conversation along to the television event of the year, a man who got a lot of people into basketball in a way they weren't before. That's, of course, Michael Jordan and The Last Dance. We want to do kind of a recap segment here, Dave, but we're a little tired of the classic winners and losers segment. So we changed it up a little bit. You're going to call it Stock Report. Kale, I don't know if you're with me here. We're going to go with Stock Report.
And we're going to leave that up there for the rest of the show, Kale. Just let people really soak in on this.
Nightmares.
So,
oh my God.
I've got a list of some individuals who came up in this so-called documentary. Shout out Horace Grant. And we're going to kind of go around the circle and see, like, you tell me, are there stonks up or down? Does that sound fun? Is everyone in?
Yeah. Can I ask you, though, what is my personal stonk doing after creating that graphic?
Way up, actually.
What did you say?
What a hater, Kale. What a hater.
Phenomenal job, producer Kale.
All right, I'm going to start with a big name and an obvious one, but not the biggest name. So we'll just go with Scottie Pippen. Eric, I'll start with you to my right. Stonk Report after 10 episodes of The Last Dance.
Yeah, I personally feel like kind of flat, but I think in general he went down a little bit, like in people's eyes. Don't you think? I don't know. After all was said and done, like they highlighted his 1.9 second thing. Like they highlighted a couple like really disliking and going at Jerry Krause and in sort of like in a more angry way than even Michael did. And I mean, he didn't come off badly at all, but I think in general he was sort of a demigod, and so there's only down to go from there, right? So
I thought the Kukoc bit. Scotty didn't look great. I mean, when Mike is the guy going, that might actually be a little harsh to the media.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually think I fully understand where Scotty was coming from internally in that moment, but it wasn't a great look for him, I thought.
Well, and Jordan also jumped at the opportunity to pile on and say he was wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And then Scotty did himself no favors by also still saying, I was fine with it.
Yeah.
Scotty should have been the hero.
1 through like 5 or 6, stock was going way up. I think the second half of that stock kind of went way down because early on, you were talking about. I had no idea he was, they were talking about he should be an MVP candidate and this or that, and I think people really saw that didn't get to watch him like, oh, this dude was like a true badass. And then later on, you saw that he had some like little flaws or this or that. I'll tell you the one thing though that to me made his stock go down the most was MJ saying, "I guess he had a headache," like dismissively, just like.
I don't know. My sympathies were fully with Scotty.
Hold on. And then, he gets the back injury in the final game in Game 6 that he winds up playing through. Right. Don't think that wasn't,
But he got injured in the first place, so.
But you know what's funny about that, though? They juxtaposed his back was hurt, so he had to just be a decoy. He couldn't do anything. With Michael Jordan's flu game, where they're like, he could barely walk, but he was the best player on the court. It's like.
Although back is different than flu.
Oh, yeah, you can play through the flu, and you can't really play through the back in the same way. What I'm saying, though, Scotty should have been the hero of this documentary, though. But unfortunately, it was produced by Michael Jordan. He goes from the guy who was underpaid. He was underpaid criminally for his entire career, and then toughs it out in Game 6 of that Jazz series. Like he should have been the unsung hero of this pod or of the doc. But
just so everyone at home
he didn't have
realizes.
Final Cut.
Harrison is definitely the Scottie Pippen of this podcast, just so you know. So, this is why you get the harsh defense of Scotty.
How do you think Scotty feels about how
terrible? He hasn't commented publicly since the doc. So.
I think the Horace Grant piece on ESPN today referenced that supposedly people close to Scotty think he does. He's not thrilled with how it went down.
He shouldn't be.
Yeah, would you?
No, I would not be.
I have to say, I know I said down. I feel kind of up about it. just thinking about Scottie Pippen again and like his game and like everything he was able to do. I mean, I know that he was painted maybe with not the most flattering brush, but just to I don't know. For me personally, just even thinking about him again, I like just watching him play again. I was like, God, that guy's incredible.
The on the court stuff, aside from not coming off the bench and then like the headache thing. Outside of that, it was Scottie Pippen was the second best player in the league for a good chunk of the 90s and definitely a top 5 player. We can debate or whatever, but he was one of the best players of that era and probably historically is underrated. That was the story, the Scottie Pippen story, that was the bulk of it. It was just that the bad stuff was
loud.
So bad.
Right. But here's the thing. Was he a good teammate? Great teammate.
Scottie Pippen, incredible.
Talked about a great teammate.
His nadir is pretty low.
His stock went low because of the 3 tiny instances where he was a bad teammate for a very short period of time. Like you made a bad decision, but everybody's like, "Oh, they love Scottie. He was the guy that put an arm around you." So.
And they won that game too. You know what I mean? I feel like that's it almost gets forgotten. And Scottie cost him with his they won it and then they moved on.
It is still a huge black mark, though.
It is. It's a tough look. I do think with a lot of these, we're going to find differences between maybe what the doc tried to do and how we end up feeling personally. Let's go to a guy who played a surprisingly large role in this documentary, Scott Burrell. So, Wind, you kept referencing, if you didn't know anything, based off of this, you'd think he was, the 3rd best player on the team. How often he came up. Do you have a stonk report for Scott after 10 episodes?
I mean, Scott Burrell might have been the biggest winner of this entire
Oh,
wow.
Stonk's rising.
His stonk might be up more than anybody. Scott Burrell played 14 minutes a game in 1998, and they talk about him like he was their 6th man or something.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even that great in those 14 minutes either. So, I mean, he came out huge from this documentary. Huge.
Dave, you look like you have some stuff to say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And also, guess what? Scott Burrell came across as a guy that Michael Jordan really liked.
Yeah.
Who also seems like he'd be a lot of fun to hang out with because Michael Jordan wanted to hang out with him.
Yep.
And can take all your shit talking.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true.
Scott Burrell is America's best friend.
Stonk
up.
Stonk up.
I will say it didn't start well for him. Wasn't the first Scott Burrell scene? The first one was the he cheats on his girlfriend and he drinks every night. Parents wasn't that the first time he was in the documentary?
Did you see what his now wife said on Twitter about that?
What'd she say?
She was like, I wasn't with Scott until 10 years after this, so great job, husband.
That's awesome. So, Dave, I'm glad you brought that up, though, because I think he's everyone's go-to example of, MJ's victims, right? But I don't think Scott was a victim. I think Scott was down for the ride.
They were friends. And this is one of the things. And, there's wow. Actually, all right. As a player, that's an insult, but
stonk report.
As a person.
The people love me. They're not sure why, but they do.
Brother, you're hell.
But we shit talk our friends the worst, right?
For sure.
And we saw enough of it to know that if MJ didn't really fuck with you, he wouldn't have bothered.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which that actually brings me to a good person to talk about. Adam Horace Grant. Stonks up or down?
Stonks up for Horace Grant, in my opinion. I thought this was great. First of all, he had some great lines. What was it he called the Pistons? Straight up bitches or whatever with the smile.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Straight up bitches.
He's aged well, too. He looks good. He looks like a man who's comfortable.
I thought he came across charming.
He doesn't look better than B.J. Armstrong.
I think watching this documentary, you wouldn't really have a great sense for the fact that him and MJ had a falling out.
Right.
Because I think they did a good job of sort of presenting him fairly and not like some of the other guys that have
and they didn't talk about that at all.
And they didn't talk about it, so I think that was a positive. But the one thing I will say is he was great, and I think you really liked him, but I think they really undersold how good of a player he was. That's the only thing I would – and really, you could say that for every non-Jordan player in this doc, but him in particular to me.
I think that there's a lot of reading between the lines here, and maybe it's just because I know, because I remember him as a player and how important he was on the first 3 title teams. But they made such a big deal out of him beating, the Bulls when he was with Orlando. And I think that they were essentially trying to point out, hey, listen, they were really missing Horace in that series, and he, made them pay. Now, that, again, is me just remembering that, everybody thinks about Nick Anderson hitting big shots, but Horace Grant was incredible in that series. I mean, he was like the veteran leader of that team. That he was their Paul Millsap.
My dad used to always text me that, and especially when this doc was coming up, because he knows I missed it. He said, make sure you research Horace Grant after this, because this guy was far closer to the next tier than kind of where he's been placed historically.
Yeah.
Especially as a winner and
exactly.
And even in I don't know where they compare talent wise, but that Draymond Green type of like elite role player. Draymond's I think a level higher, but
might be more like a Bosch.
But it's more that's a good one. But I'm getting at the understanding of that role, and the willingness to excel within it.
Great passer.
Yeah.
I mean, like the triangle was as good as it was for them because they didn't have any guys who couldn't pass. And Horace Grant was one of the best passing bigs in the league. Had a nice little 15-foot elbow jumper. I mean, Horace, it was a big deal. As a Bulls fan, as a kid, it was a big deal to me when Horace Grant left.
Here's an example for the way the documentary kind of tells the story it wants you to know. Is like in 94 they were great, 95 they were bad. Well, Horace Grant was gone between those years. So like it's not mentioned. It's just kind of, I think they say something like, by 95 we'd kind of run out of steam, and it's like no, like he lost a major,
player.
A very key piece of what made you guys.
He was on the other team that beat you. Like, it all played in, factored in. But I thought he came off. I thought he was portrayed fine. I was actually interested to see how upset he was. I don't know if you guys saw those comments. Did
you see that he was saying he was mad basically that Michael Jordan called him a snitch for being the one that reported to the...
Did you guys get that sense that MJ was saying that explicitly? Because I actually didn't.
I
mean, he did. He said it. He did say that verbatim. He said that Horace Grant leaked to the media.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But then Horace Grant said, but MJ said
Bitchy,
that...
I agree. I like it.
What did he say?
He said Jokic is the best passer in the league. Just every now and then.
He's not even watching the show.
I dig it.
That's amazing. I forgot what I was going to say. What was I saying?
We can move on. We got a
we've got a lot. I think this one...
Who do we think was the leak, though? I have to ask you.
Phil Jackson, no doubt about it.
Yeah, the guy who has like 5 books on those teams.
But also probably Horace Grant, too.
Yeah,
probably everybody.
Maybe some other people.
Also,
everybody. B.J. Armstrong was also like, look, everybody talked, right? I mean, like, anytime you say that, you were involved in it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that all those guys had some thoughts and some things to say about MJ.
Yeah.
Steve Kerr, I thought one of the big winners of this doc, but that also wasn't surprising. Like his stock was already pretty high for me, but it did go up just in terms of like I don't know to see him in context as a competitor, and to see like the way he talked about the Jordan incident. I definitely gained respect for him there.
Yeah.
How about how Steve Kerr punched first? How about that?
Yeah, I like it.
Punched in the chest. I've been trying to visualize this.
Probably just.
What are you talking about?
Pushed
like a
him.
shove.
Yeah.
Kerr's huge winner. He might be the biggest winner of all of this for me, and only because like like you said, it's no surprise. But man, he just is just so charming, so likable, so like gets it, clearly understands his role in the world and the universe, and it's fun watching him.
But it's funny because the way he describes his role in the world and the universe is not his actual role. Like he's like, blah, blah, blah. He's like a ultra champion coach. He won NBA major NBA games with his shot.
He's like a small piece of that, like in a meaningful piece. But he understands it's not like where's Jordan sitting here telling you about why everything is like about him, and he's right. But he's telling you this, and Steve Kerr's like, I was this little piece of it.
Yeah, I know, but he's not acknowledging the level at which he was doing these minor things. It's like he's like somebody being like, well, I was probably only the second best vice president. Like,
exactly,
dude.
Well, and think about this. So he's a part of the '90s Bulls. He's a part of the Spurs during their run, and then he starts the run essentially for the Warriors. And wasn't bad in Phoenix as an executive, except for...
Didn't he win Executive of the Year?
Yeah. So
he was also incredible as an announcer.
And as an analyst too, yeah.
Yeah.
Turns out he's rated everything. You're right.
The last
It's
good
funny.
TNT color guy.
If you think about it, it's like the inverse of what Larry Bird did. Because Larry Bird, was such a phenomenally better player than Steve Kerr, and then was a pretty good executive and was a pretty good coach, but didn't reach the levels that Kerr reached in those roles. So, kind of interesting.
I'll move. Here's a quick one that I kind of want to answer for myself. Gary Payton, stonks are down. I mean, I personally won't hold it against him, but MJ really did his best. And what an all-time moment. The laughter, the chuckle, whether he was right or wrong.
Right.
And
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Court of public opinion is closed. Sorry.
I said this last night, but I just love one by one everyone in this doc goes, well, I stood up to him, and Jordan's like, yup. And that's how he became my guy. And then Gary's like, I stood up to Mike. And Michael's like,
Uncontrollably. No lie.
So Gary, I've got Gary is down. Okay, I'm interested to see where you guys go with this one. A lot of meat on the bone. Jerry Krause.
Woo!
It's a lot of sympathy in the first one because they just went so hard on him.
Yeah.
I mean, before they even show the opening, the Last Dance credit thing, you can see, they're just going to rip Jerry Krause a new one. And then, so sympathy stock goes up, especially because he's not around, and he couldn't have been on the dock to defend himself.
Right, yeah.
So sympathy stock goes up, and then sympathy stock goes down when you see, him acting. I said this today on one of our shows. It's like an architect coming in once a house has been built by the contractors, wiping his brow and going, wow, man, I worked so hard on this.
Oh, the post game at the presser in the locker room?
Right.
I think it's an organization.
Yeah. And so stock goes way down. But then you see, though, at the end of it, you're like, this guy built this incredible team.
Right.
And as an executive, at least, deserves quite a lot of credit. And then I even went further and said, you can watch just the way that they finished this documentary. You can see Rodman was mentally checking out. Pippen's body was falling apart. And Jordan didn't know if he really wanted to play or not. And you could say, okay, is it worth it to bring these guys back and spend, it probably would have cost them $50, $60 million.
But
hold on. Now, this is eschewing the emotional part of it and saying, well, of course you bring them back because that's just what you do, sports and nostalgia. I mean, Jerry Krause was essentially GMing like we praise Masai Ujiri for doing.
Right.
Yeah.
But doesn't he get major negative points for driving away Phil Jackson, which you could have, if you're talking about but MJ would have played the next year with Phil Jackson, and you could find other role players.
But he's also the same guy that fired an extremely competent coach in Doug Collins just to get after Phil. Now I understand there was clearly personal impact. But now I understand. I mean, as it was told in the doc,
Doug Collins was a below average coach. Below average.
All right, but he's still the guy that makes the decision to go and get Phil, and that was a risk at the time. So I understand it becomes a petty and personal thing.
So Krause pushed for Phil Jackson as an assistant.
Yeah.
Right. But that was he was clearly grooming him the whole way to be this next guy.
He brought
him in, the guy that took that risk. I know it becomes petty and personal, but he also needs to get a little leeway at the end of this thing in terms of, hey, what's the next risk we need to take?
Right.
The next
but Phil was going to get really expensive too, and so I think, and I'm sure you'll get to this. Sure, you'll get to Reinsdorf, but this is where, if you look since then, what has Reinsdorf done when he's hired these executives? They're constantly in these adversarial relationships with the head coaches. Where, you know what I mean?
And save Reinsdorf, though, because he's going to be coming up.
But I'm just saying, this feels like ownership impressing on management. This is how you need to be.
I think Krause's stock is down only because the average person doesn't put a ton of thought into trying to navigate the truth. But I do think if you do stop and just take the evidence that was presented to you in this documentary, his stock should rise. like, I think we understand Krause if you're really paying attention. There's the part that the documentary tells us about him, that he was sort of adversarial and he wanted a lot of credit and he said the wrong thing at the wrong time, had no charisma. But the thing that the documentary shows you but doesn't tell you is that he was super competent and actually right about a lot of this stuff, including, in my opinion, we can't say ownership is the biggest market advantage in sports and then also not say that organizations win championships, not just players, like he said. We all agree on this. It's just how we phrase it. And he phrased it in a way that really sounds the dumbest and most flattering as possible. But what he was saying is actually true, in my opinion.
And I also think there's this dynamic that this doc really did not explore, which is, I'm sure there was this compounding effect of that Jerry was being bullied and victimized on a personal level. And a guy that, which maybe this is extremely assumptive, but just based off kind of the way he presents himself, maybe he experienced growing up as well. And he's sitting here and he's in this position and he's done all the right stuff and he's getting picked apart mercilessly by these dudes and no one seems to have his back. Now, maybe it's his own doing, and I understand that. But we have to understand, how a physically actual small man might have felt smaller and smaller.
So lame.
It's actually humanity. It's actually how stuff works.
But you tear the Bulls apart because you're sad that they were mean to you.
Eric,
you don't re-sign Phil Jackson, which is the reason that the whole thing falls apart.
Clearly was flawed.
It all comes down to how he personally felt. We're not talking about business at the end. We're talking about he felt slighted by Phil Jackson, so he does not re-sign him.
You constantly do this thing, Eric, where you make it.
Talk, Eric, that Phil didn't want to come back.
Dave,
because of him. Because of him.
Commercial break, and it's just no appreciation.
I know. I was just thinking.
This is like the Oscars playing the music. All right, wrap up your speech.
All right, wrap it up. Let's get to ad read.
I think it was probably partly because of Phil, because of Krause, but building over a while. All right, guys. Mile High City.
Just get the last word in.
Copper Lager. You can pick up a 15-pack of 12-ounce cans at Davidson's. You can pick it up at your local liquor store. Only $17 for 12 ounces of the Mile High City Copper Lager. It's an awesome beer. It's an awesome deal.
I choose to believe that they put it in a 15-pack to honor Jokic.
I think so too. What other reason?
No, there's no other reason.
For sure. So make sure to pick that up this week.
Pack. We'll call it the Jokic pack. The Jokic pack. The Mile High City Copper Lager Jokic pack.
Yeah. You could ask for your buddy to give you an assist. Toss you Mile High City.
Look at that.
For sure.
Pixelated photo.
It is clear in person, just FYI.
Also, guys, the wait is finally over. DraftKings has brought legal sports betting to Colorado. May have flown a little under your radar with no sports, but just imagine how much more fun watching a game will be when you have some skin in the game. The best way to get in on the action is with DraftKings.
Tomorrow I'm going to have such a huge bet for you guys on DraftKings. The best bet you could possibly, a lot.
Baby.
I can't wait to share it. Tomorrow it's coming.
I can't wait.
Yeah, so if you guys want to sign up for DraftKings, make sure you use promo code DNVR. I got to ask you guys, Ryan Koenigsberg was betting on ping pong today.
No.
It looked like it could have been going down in somebody's garage.
First off, it was table tennis.
Fair foul.
Ping pong.
This is a pro sport. This is table tennis.
I mean, it's fair as insofar it is legal for sure, but that's
yeah. Are we going to be doing the DNVR doc in 20 years and talk about Ryan Koenigsberg's gambling problem the same way we're doing Jokic?
He gambled the company away.
Decent possibility.
It wouldn't matter what it was. Table tennis, the KBO. He was throwing dollars all over the place.
He's in his DNVR bet sunglasses. And then they poison the Bojos.
He does not have a gambling problem.
He does not have a gambling
problem. Competitive problem.
Anyways, download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code DNVR when you sign up. For a limited time, all new users can get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. That's right. So DraftKings Sportsbook has a sign-up bonus for up to $1,000. Don't forget to enter the code DNVR and get that sign-up bonus. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only. Bonus is comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
So you really are the Pippin of the broadcast, especially with how slowly you read ads.
Well, I could get through them a lot quicker if I wouldn't have to deal with these interruptions. Like, I would get through them twice as fast.
Just like
did you read the ad?
Distractions.
Did you read the ad before you just went on air?
No. What?
Harrison's not trying to fuck up his summer. Read ads.
If I may, just be a professional. So read the ad ahead of time.
Stop. Get out of here. Get out of here, Dave.
He's read these ads every day.
Get out of here, Dave. Talking about a stonk going down.
Okay, so I want to move on, but we can't yet because we have, the two most important figures to cover. So let's go into Reinsdorf. Stonks up or down? Mares, what do you think?
I think his stonks is the same, but it shouldn't be. His stonks should be way down. Like, for all of the reasons that, honestly, like, Jerry Krause just was like his shield throughout this whole thing. But Reinsdorf deserved a lot. I think if you don't know anything about him and you just watched this documentary, you would not have an opinion about him, which is a huge win, because if you do know anything about him, you have a negative opinion about Reinsdorf. And the thing that this thing didn't really do a great job saying, and what I've read and heard over and over again, I think it's a featured part of the Jordan rules, he didn't care for basketball. He wanted his baseball team.
That's it.
That's all he cared about.
That's all he cared about.
It would be akin to like if the Kroenkes were huge hockey
soccer
guys,
fans or
soccer or whatever. They were just like the Nuggets are rallying
NFL
up champions
fans
with the greatest player ever, and they're like, oh man, it'd be great if the Avs were better. Like
right,
whatever. So
how can we get him into our minor league baseball system?
Can we get Patrick Waugh to come back?
Exactly.
No, we can't. That bridge is burned.
Yeah, and my favorite part of it was where, they would go through this whole thing. Oh, yeah, you're going to break up the team and all this stuff. And, he's like, well, Jerry wanted to do it.
I know, you're in charge.
Yeah, no shit. Jerry Reinsdorf wanted to do it.
He also Oh, good.
I see this comment, though. I just want to say, I don't think this is true. I mean, first of all, the NFL, the deal that they had, the Kroenkes moving the Rams from their home, St. Louis, to Los Angeles, that netted them several $1 billion. Like, that was...
it's an easy decision.
And over the last 5 years, that has been such a labor-intensive project. But both of the Kroenkes are huge basketball fans. I mean, Josh played
particularly
in Missouri.
Josh, yeah.
But even Stan, they're both huge basketball guys. So I think basketball is actually very important to them.
They just happen to be frugal.
They just happen to be, very, very frugal. But you know what? They're on the clock. I've always said this. I have said that in the past they have been this or that, or their reputation precedes them. They're on the clock because the next 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to see if they're willing to do what it takes to win a championship.
But what does that mean, on the clock? What does that mean?
It means I don't blame them for not going to the luxury tax 3 years ago when people were like, well, they'll never do this or that. It's like, well, why would
Wilson
you?
Chandler
winning
and
35,
Reed.
yeah. So I don't. When people complain about that, I'm just like, they went from 30 wins, or they had an organization that went from 30 wins to 54, and all of these good moves. But now there's no more excuse. Now you're gonna have to spend some money, and
for sure.
And we'll see if they do it.
Harrison, neither of us were really familiar with much of this story coming in, coming out. I feel like Reinsdorf, it's like, wow, he really has always been this cheap. He didn't seem to care, and I don't know if it's disinterest or ineptitude, but I think a lot of this falls on him. Do you agree with me? Are his stocks down?
Yeah, way down, way down. I mean, he had 20 years to come up with an excuse for why he tore the team apart, and
he didn't.
Yeah, what was his excuse? Like, they wouldn't have the market value to bring him back.
Oh,
I mean,
God,
instead the Bulls were the worst team in the entire Eastern Conference next year during the lockout, and their best moment over the next decade was a one Derrick Rose playoff run. So yeah.
Mark Cuban's not the best owner. He's not perfect or whatever. But the one thing I don't really question is that he actually likes what he's doing and he's in it for reasons outside of just money. Money is obviously a huge factor. But when a Reinsdorf says, I have Michael freaking Jordan and the 3-time NBA champions, and he says things like the market value wasn't there, what market value is there for
by the way,
repeat?
Or
There's no
such
thing as a market value for
The Knicks are their cover through all this because the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
That was one of the most valuable sports brands in the world during this period, and it's been squandered. And we don't talk about that because we don't think about them in those terms. We think about the Knicks.
It's true.
But the league, the league should be just as annoyed with the Bulls as they are with the Knicks. But the Knicks still sell tickets. Chicago doesn't. Maybe they should be more annoyed.
Do you remember when David Stern was handing Michael Jordan the MVP trophy, and he was like, "Thank you, Michael, for being in the league and selling as many tickets." And then Jerry Reinsdorf is just like, "Yeah, I don't know if MJ's gonna bring the market value. I don't know."
Also, just as a person, he has the flattest affect. He's like a wooden board.
He's also just whoever put lipstick on him for these interviews. It's not the right decision.
Yeah, you gotta refer him to your guy, Harrison, whoever that is.
He just came off as like a bystander. I'm like, dude, you're not a bystander. You're the owner. Okay, let's move on. This is the one, the big one. Michael Jordan. I will go. Eric, we'll start with you. Stonks up or down?
Stonk through the roof. The stonk, like you can't even get in on this anymore. Like the stonks are out of control. Like the thing for me personally is that like I've always had an eye on the NBA. I was casual, kind of like Dave was, coming up through a lot of the Jordan era, but I did have an affinity for the Nuggets because they're my home team. But so I never really. I mean, you guys know now how I consume sports. I mean, it's like you're either with me or against me. You can take that L on the way out. So when I see Michael Jordan, like he's great, but F him. He's not on my team. So like now getting to watch it through just the pure, observing him as who he was, being able to just be on his team essentially. In life, it felt good. I enjoyed it. So, stonks way up for me, Michael Jordan. And I feel like the GOAT conversation is going to calm down for a little while. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
I think there's a generational divide.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, without question.
Who's going to see this as up or down? Because the younger folks that the LeBron is the GOAT folks, the younger people. Yeah. They're going to say, wow, this guy's a real dick to everyone. A tyrant, a bully.
I love it.
There's all this stuff, right? But then the older folks are going to be like, well, yeah.
That's what it takes to win, baby.
Well, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
This adds to the legacy.
You're talking about specifically me versus Brendan right now. You're defining this almost exactly as it is.
I think the divide.
What? No, that's a perfect point. You're drunk with power, Kel. You're drunk with power.
Wrong. See, there's the divide. So I think that the generational divide is actually you're going to wind up seeing more division rather than for a long time it was like either one. I can't argue against either one. Whatever. But in reality, nobody's talking enough about Tim Duncan, who's the real GOAT.
Oh, baby.
I love it. Wow,
Let's
I came out of this thing just thinking Jordan's just an ultra freaking badass.
Okay.
He's freaking awesome.
You know why you think that, Harrison?
Because it's true. It's
right.
absolutely true.
And I thought that going in, and like the behind-the-scenes stuff was cool, but I kind of thought this was the case going in. So, I mean, I don't think this doc really changed my opinion on Jordan that much, to be honest, man.
It even changed mine. I'll be honest. It even changed mine a little bit. I think I'm with Eric. The stonk is through the ceiling, which is the roof. It's just like so much. We talked about how nobody moves like him. Like the way he just like jumped and hung in the air and stuff is unique, and you can just identify. Oh yeah, that's Michael, and nobody else does that. Is the same. His trash talk was the same. His faces were the same. Like his interaction, the way he just walked up and down the bus, and through the everything about him was just so freaking cool. And yes, there's some propaganda in here. Yes, there's certain things about him that weren't good or things that were brushed over or this or that. But you don't need all of that even context just to look at him and be like, this dude is a total badass. He's incredibly great at basketball. He's hyper competitive in exactly the ways that have been like mythologized over the years. And it just was natural to him. Like him talking trash to everybody and his confidence going into Game 7 and saying, we will win the game. Even if he said it today, I just feel like he has a way of being both cocky and arrogant, but also disarming. Like you watch him up there, and you're kind of like, yeah, they are going to win. Like,
how do I know? MJ said it. That's
exactly. That's how I know. Like, it's right. So, stock through the roof.
Wind?
No, stock up for sure. For sure.
No. All right, good stuff. Yeah, no, I think, his stocks are up. I mean, yeah, of course they are. He wanted them to be. It's perceived that way.
He just made a bunch of money off this documentary.
Yeah, like he's cool again. And honestly, man, the thing that really I will hammer is like before this doc for people my age and under, like MJ's coolness is like almost like a dad talking about Pearl Jam. Like I buy it, but it's not a part of my life. You know what I mean? And like I was at a party and no one was playing. No one was playing Pearl Jam. But you know what I'm saying? But now Michael Jordan right now, in my life, he's never been more at the forefront of the public eye and discourse. And that's actually
listen.
And that's actually the first time.
He's over 20 years removed from like the real end of his career. We're not counting the Wizards years.
Yeah.
And
the guy, apparently.
Listen, the guy still sells shoes. You know, he owns a team. I'm just like, we just had 5 weeks of Michael Jordan-centric content where everyone pulled out every damn story that they had, right?
Yeah,
like
it was great.
That isn't going to happen with anybody who's playing now.
Yeah, agreed.
It's not going to be like that.
Agreed. I'm a huge LeBron guy. I can't see the LeBron doc being compelling.
Nobody's buying any LeBron shoes after he retires. I don't even know if they're buying them now. I don't think they are.
I'm pretty sure people are. I don't know, but
I only see the team shoe.
Too clunky.
They look like boots.
Kayla's drunk with power. We
All right, let's keep this going though, because I left off a couple of big names and screw it. It's our show. We don't.
Yeah, right. What do we care?
We don't have to go in order.
There's no reality. What about Phil Jackson? Who?
There's only one answer, guys.
Yeah. So he
went
from
Scott Burrell.
He went from like really high up here to like really high up here for me. He's one of the coolest people in or out of sports.
He is cool. He is also very cool.
His presence, his voice, but also like his contributions. And, you know, we are privy to a lot of different forms that genius can take in society. There's a lot to appreciate, but like emotional genius, you know what I'm saying? Spiritual genius. I think Phil actually falls into that category. And what a unique kind of archetype for someone who is in a traditional sports story, the story of a hero. So what a cool dude.
You know, Greg Popovich gets a lot of credit for the relationships that he builds with his players. But if you take a closer look, it's like, okay, but you have to do it within the Spurs way, right? Phil Jackson had relationships with his players, but Phil Jackson met them where they were.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Phil was able to get so much out of individuals, right? Like he got a ton out of the individual. And Steve Kerr, by the way, very good at this in a similar way to Phil. Yep. But got so much out of the the individual, but then also got them to harness it in the team.
Yeah.
And whereas Pop, and this is not a knock on Pop, I think Pop is like the second greatest coach of all time behind Phil Jackson. But Pop definitely gets that team part, right? So he builds that camaraderie. But I don't know if like we ever saw him, like maybe Tim Duncan, you know, is like the only example. Which, by the way, fantastic example. But you've got this guy who was just, you know, like felt like the coach was actually able to elevate this guy to that sort of level.
I love this comment here. Michael Malone could use this as like Malone might be the opposite of a Phil Jackson from a temperament standpoint.
Yeah,
Phil
and I mean,
like he's rarely rattled.
I was gonna say he's a literalist too, though.
And the way it seemed like he never tried to even harness a Michael or Kobe, merely just guide them, right, or channel them, and. I don't know.
Or Rodman.
He's Rodman, man.
Hey,
like the Rodman part where he left and Phil is clearly pissed, but it's just like, well, of course he's gonna freaking play. Like, what am I going to punish this dude in the finals? Come on.
Yeah, well, even more like, he facilitated that stuff.
Right.
Like it was more than just like letting it happen. He like wanted the leaders to be on the floor and to run, you know, with mob justice and, you know, for it to be like kept in house. And
so this is a tangent, but I do wonder, and we've talked a little bit about this, but I do wonder if part of why Malone keeps talking about we need somebody to step up and challenge people and this or that, and I do wonder if it's Malone is that guy, and maybe, and look, I'm not trying to bail out the players. They ultimately need to overcome whatever obstacle, but I do wonder if it's not an environment that fosters itself to that. Well, I do wonder if Phil was here, if he would allow certain things to boil over on purpose, because it's like they're either going to figure this out on themselves or not. I can squash out this little fire, but another one's going to pop up in a month and a month and a month. And I just wondered, that to me, that seemed like Phil's genius. He was like, this is a thing, this is a test, and they have to figure it out themselves, not me figuring it out for them.
I also think, though, that he had that paired partner, right? He got to be the good cop.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Jordan was the bad cop. Kobe was the bad cop. Kobe didn't do the thing where he built the personal relationships like Jordan did. Kobe kind of skipped that part and ignored his teammates, and which is why they think about it though. That's why they had quite a bit of like unrest within that locker room, those locker rooms. It seemed like Kobe figured that out later on, but I think unless you've got
once he was done playing,
right? Yeah, you need that, but you need that player that can either be the good cop or be the bad cop.
Yeah.
And
they do not have any bad cops.
Well, think about the Spurs again, right? Like, you had Greg Popovich, who would shoot people out. He also would take people aside after or whatever. But you had Tim Duncan, who was Mr. Big Brother, and also got chewed out the same way.
Right, and accepted it.
Right.
I wonder, the thing that bothers me, David, maybe you could shed light on this. I really soured on Phil when he just, in the last stage of his career, when he just didn't adjust to the new game. Like, it really irked me when he couldn't figure out that corner threes were not bad shots, as he is on record saying, when he talked about the Warriors not being able to win with their style of play. Like, it does seem like everybody eventually falls out and just, like, loses their fastball, weird. And maybe that's him. But at the same time, I watch this and I'm like, dude, he really is such a great person, manager, and leader and all these different things. And I can't reconcile that with the fact that his takes on basketball at the end of his career were so bad.
Yeah, it's weird because whether that shot is worth 3 points or not, it is the most open shot typically, that weak side corner, right? It's the whole point.
The geometry of the court.
Exactly. And so, even without that, it's an open jump shot, which is, supposed to be a good shot. It's great because of the 3-point line. Like, it's not a hard concept. I have watched basketball with people who are not into basketball, some that have never watched basketball. And the question is usually, why don't they shoot every shot as a three, right? Because they're open more often and all these other things. So I don't know why he couldn't do it. I actually think the triangle is alive in a few offenses in the NBA. I mean, the Warriors, the Spurs, a little bit there. Not that much for you guys, although Jokic would be fantastic in the triangle. But just moving it out to the 3-point line is totally doable, and you could still take advantage of, like a spread pick and roll type action. Why he never figured that out, I don't know. Why he tried to get people who were not like triangle, tried and tested to coach it with inferior talent, I don't know.
Yeah.
But when things work as well as they have for Phil, I think at a certain point you just say, well, it's worked up to this point, and he's mostly been right.
Yeah.
He's wrong one time.
Yeah.
I'm glad
lose it eventually.
I'm glad this happened though, because again, going back to the people my age thing, that's a lot of our last memories of Phil was the Knicks tenure, which is like the worst way to remember Phil Jackson.
Well, yeah, I mean that's tough though. That's GM versus coach, like
different gigs.
Well, yeah, I mean it's completely. Well, I mean, listen, if you're a GM, you are you're all about your plan and your theory being put into place, and if you're the coach, you're carrying it out. And so he has, as a coach, he has the ability to affect what's happening on the court so much more than just philosophically being in the front office and just sort of being like, I think this would work. Like with Phil, maybe on the court, actually preaching it to the players, maybe it would still work.
Yeah. Let's lightning around these last ones because they're interesting for like 20 seconds.
My biggest winner of the whole thing was Toni Kukoc. What a pro.
Wow.
What a sweetheart. And they tried to come for him, and it didn't work. I felt bad for him the whole time. He came off as competent, underrated, unbothered, comfortable in his own skin. Like, good for Toni, man. Good for
Basketball
Toni.
Hall of Famer, Toni Kukoc.
Yeah, it worked out.
Phil Jackson drawing the play up for Toni Kukoc was the right call and the easy call, I think.
And he hit the shot. I really wish
Pippen wasn't that like Kukoc was definitely the guy you wanted to shoot that. No, I'm not even like being sarcastic at all.
No, I
thought he had the quote of the whole doc when he was like, I mean, I did hit a lot of game-winning shots that year. It's not like I was like Steve Kerr.
Dave, you know about my guy?
He was a way better shooter than
Zeljko Obradovic.
Zeljko Obradovic. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, he's the Phil Jackson of Europe.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Not
he's pretty good.
Yeah, Kukoc. I would say stock up as well because you're right. He is a sweetheart, man.
But he won the doc for you. He was the number what?
That's a stretch.
Honestly, the harder they tried to dunk on him, the more he won for me. He was such a chill guy. John Paxson stonks up. really, I don't know. I didn't know much.
He's in such a small part of this.
I think it's down because when you saw the interview, you were just reminded, like, oh God, this guy really did run the Bulls for the last 10 years.
Reggie, stonks up or down?
Up, way up.
Probably up.
Way up.
Although, we had this discussion on the show today. People trying to debate whether Reggie was a better player than Pippen. And no, absolutely not. Doesn't mean Reggie Miller was a bad player, but Scottie Pippen was on a completely different tier. But yeah, Reggie as a Bulls fan, you were scared of Reggie because every time he got open, it felt like he was going to make it.
And he seemed like, I mean, it's all easy to say after the fact, but he just seemed like he was up for it, man. Like listening to him in those final
Reggie Miller is one of few players, as Ben Taylor has talked about this on his show, one of the few players who was better throughout his career in the playoffs than the regular season. Michael Jordan, another one. But it's very, very rare for a player to statistically improve, even on a per minute basis in the playoffs. He's one of them.
And also it's like really nice to see these guys that you see all the time as the second part of their career in the primary part. Like you're like Reggie Miller is annoying, but then you like see him on the court, you're like, Reggie Miller is a killer. He's incredible.
Yeah.
Adam, you've said this, but it's actually impossible how much cooler he is in between and outside of the lines. Like on the court, ultimate badass. Off the court, corny ass.
So corny.
So corny.
But such a badass in the games. Like that's the thing. He really was.
Second best basketball player in his own family.
Wild one.
Another gentleman who seems to have a different rep in between and outside of the lines, Isaiah Thomas, stonks up, stonks down after this documentary.
I think maybe
that's a great one.
Going down.
I mean, his stonks weren't high.
Yeah, I mean, probably up a little bit. But down because it reminded people of all his other stuff.
That's what I got from it.
The documentary only highlighted the bad parts of him.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
but the thing is also just being highlighted in the documentary brought up every other thing, right? Like Karl Malone, for instance. Barely in this thing, and stock is way down.
Yeah.
Pretty much every time he shows his face, his stock's dropping. But the Isaiah thing, like the Pistons were the only like challengers that were presented as comparable and worthy in this doc. Like, I mean, to me, it seemed like everyone else was like, yeah, they gave us a hard time, but let's skip to when we win. But the Pistons stuff, because he fell short so many times. That might. I mean, obviously psychologically, of course, yeah.
And I think that the Pistons. I remember those series, right? Like I remember the Bulls getting beat, and me thinking in '90 there was no way the Bulls were going to lose, and then back to Pippen having a headache, right?
I guess
I remember that, and
I guess
yeah. And I think that hurdle was so big. And then you add on, there was the personal part of it for Mike.
Yeah.
Because beating the Pistons is literally, like, they looked at that as, all right, now we trampoline into the dynasty. Because the Pistons had been so good in the East at the end of the 80s. So, like, in the grand scope of Jordan's career, we tend to focus most of our conversation and talk on that last 91 to 98. But I think for Mike, I bet he probably thinks about 84 to 90 so much more, because that really formed who he was, as a professional basketball player. And so when he wants to tell the story, I wasn't shocked that they spent so much time talking about the Pistons. Because, again, and this is me, I'm playing like armchair psychologist here, but I think that for Mike, that was like, you know what, that was the last real hurdle that was, competition externally rather than internally. Like Mike always thought, he just had to beat himself, essentially, to win, right? Like, I'm not going to lose to me. I'm going to crush everybody else. Yeah. And so I'm going to win. But I think that he didn't believe that until he beat the Pistons.
Yeah.
Win, do you want to hit another read for us, brother?
Damn, that was supposed to be quick, wasn't it?
Yeah, quick
enough. Yeah, that was the lightning round, just for...
MSU Denver Online puts a dynamic education at your fingertips without forcing you to decide between earning a degree and living your life. MSU Denver is the Colorado institution providing rigorous and affordable online programs taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom.
You
Yes,
could
he had a professor.
you could actually take a class from Dr. Travis Heath. You could sign up for MSU and be in his class. How great would that be?
And you heard him say on this podcast there are no wrong answers, so that sounds like an easy A.
Yeah. I would bet he's a great teacher and an easy grader. I think both things are probably true.
Yeah, MSU Denver Online, great for first-time freshmen, or if you are looking to get another degree or go back to school. MSU Denver Online is a great place to do that. Also, guys, let's see what else we got here. What else we got here? Oh, yeah, we got Manscaped today.
Oh, let's hear about it.
Oh, the Lawnmower 3.0.
That's right.
Dave podcast.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Let's see here.
It's so incredible that I'll fill for you while you look for the copy.
Kale, you know what to do. You know what to do. Come on now. Come on, buddy.
Listen.
Here we go.
Hey, Manscaped
Just like
3.0. Just because you can't go out doesn't mean you can't take care of yourself.
That's right.
Listen to this, guys. The Last Dance documentary has brought up the ongoing debate that no one will ever win. Is Michael Jordan the GOAT? Is LeBron the GOAT? One thing we do know for sure is Manscaped is the GOAT for the below-the-belt grooming. We do know that.
This is actually true. It's really
Don't
nice.
gamble on manscaping like MJ did before Game 2 of the '93 Finals. Play it safe with the Lawnmower 3.0.
I bet the Lawnmower 3.0 would work pretty well on an actual goat, too. You know?
Yes, Eric. You're probably right.
Yeah, it would.
Probably right.
You guys
Not
can get it
recommended.
for 20% off plus free shipping with the code DNVR20 at manscaped.com.
You have a couple more of these real quick while we wait. Drew is going to hop in. Nobody wanted to hop in on the steps today. No contestants.
They're scared.
The steps. I know.
Scared.
My feeling is that Beaston is afraid. I'm calling you out.
Beaston?
Have not
Get
done
on
it.
here,
Always in
loser.
the chat. Never.
Manya on here.
Manya too. Like, yeah. I'm going to call everybody out. But you have a couple more. Let's do
all right,
lightning round while we wait for Drew.
I got one more.
Okay.
Chuck. Not a ton of Chuck in this doc, but did it change how you feel at all?
I mean, I loved Charles Barkley as a basketball player. I think he's funny as a TV personality. It didn't really change anything for me, again, because I remember how good he was in that MVP year in Phoenix. I mean, he really was just incredible. I really thought Phoenix might beat the Bulls.
Was he the second best player in basketball? Top
Yeah,
three?
for sure.
Is that
Absolutely.
Look at this quote. Is this a Michael Jordan quote? If you've ever heard one, you can't lose if you don't play. Isn't that what Michael said? Wait, no, maybe the opposite of that.
This is the opposite.
This is the opposite of Michael mentality here. Unbelievable. Also, I see this one here. Somebody's saying, can you give us a timetable? The show is always Monday through Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock Mountain Time. I have no idea what that is Belgrade time. I'm guessing 4 to 5 in the morning.
Both guys we call out
And
have
then
a
on
reason.
Friday, it's at noon, which is probably like 8 o'clock Belgrade time, I believe. So that's it. All right, we have our contestant for the steps.
Oh, yeah!
Drew Kreisman is here, ladies and gentlemen.
I can't believe you showed your face here, Drew.
Is this a Mountain Beach?
What are we looking at here? Oh, it's the
it's
lager.
the copper
I love
lager
Drew's
before it was an MHC.
patented. This is how my philosophy professor used to teach Drew. He'd just lean into your face, right up into the camera.
You gotta have a signature move. This is an NBA.
Drew,
podcast,
did you
right?
get the 15-can sampler? Is that where you got that from?
I did. I got it delivered
Yeah,
from
knew it.
Davidson's even.
Oh,
Drew,
nice.
Nice, look at that.
Drew, it drives me
DNVR
crazy
so
that
hard.
the Avs guys have claimed ownership over you. You've become an Avs guy, and
Well, we don't
here
want
we
him.
are.
He
I
thinks
want
Chauncey Billups is overrated. I do not claim Drew in this house.
Whoa! It's been 60 seconds, and you've
Sorry.
already got everyone to hate me.
I think about it a lot, Drew. When you it's on you.
Drew, but what do we have to do to win you from the Avs guys? Is it we could get beer or what's it going to take?
This is a tough one, man. I'm such a huge NBA guy, and I just got my heart broken so bad.
Oh no, maybe the steps aren't for Drew.
I'm not gonna know any of this.
So Drew is a Carmelo guy, not necessarily a Jokic guy. Is that right? Am I misleading if I say this?
That's fair. I'm not. I have no anti-Jokic feelings whatsoever. In fact, I enjoy watching him play. I was just an enormous Carmelo fan, and I haven't been into the team as much lately.
Okay, we're gonna get you on board like we
You're
we
in.
did with the Avs. We're gonna get you back, but first we're gonna completely humiliate you.
Right after this, that's what will get you back.
First, start by telling people my most controversial Nuggets opinion by far.
Sorry, dude. You don't get to hide that one. It's so wrong.
Unbelievable. These are bullying techniques, Brandon. You
These are
chide them
bullying
until it's your turn.
All right, Kale, number one. Load this one up. Question number one. Climb the steps. And Dave, of course, remember, I don't know if you know the rules, but you can help him out. You're both... He's
lifelong
he can be the
Nuggets
winner,
fan.
But you can help him out with any questions.
Answer
You
for
can
him?
you
You
can
can answer.
advise him to answer.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, yeah, ultimately, Drew has to verbalize what the answer is, but you can say whatever you want. You
I
can
just
choose
got
to
done
accept
talking
or-
about how casual of a fan I was before I was making money doing this. So.
Let's go.
Question number one. How many playoff series did the 2019 Denver Nuggets win?
One.
Oh, no. Oh, wait. Come on, man.
They won... Wait a
Two.
second.
No, because they... No, wait. How many did... Come on. See, I'm already terrible at this. Let's go with two.
Mike,
Dave.
it's...
Wait.
Wait.
No,
guys,
wait.
guys.
Oh, my God.
Did he talk
I forgot. Okay, sorry.
I thought this was an easy question.
Sorry.
Oh my god!
All right,
I get paid to cover the
How
NBA, and I
many
can't
playoff
remember.
series did the Nuggets win?
Not did they appear? Not how many did they appear in? How many did they win?
Last
Okay.
summer, guys.
Okay. You're right.
I
You're
was
right. You're
literally
right.
covering a different professional sport. I don't want to. Look.
You're right.
I don't know what you guys have answered here. I'm so confused.
Which answer?
He said one. He said one.
One.
That is correct.
Yes.
That was my answer.
Sorry. I thought you said how many were they in?
Yeah, okay, there you go. All right, question number two. What number did Allen Iverson wear for the Denver Nuggets?
3.
That's your final answer?
Now I know that was his number. Now that you've asked me that, and you said for the Denver Nuggets. Yeah. No one else took
That is
3
correct.
on that.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
Number 3. What team did the Nuggets acquire Jeremy Grant from?
It's north of Dallas.
Don't do that. Every guest always wants to not say that. Everybody does. Give a separate trivia.
Thunder,
Oklahoma
right?
City.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is correct.
I'm proud
All
of you,
right,
Drew.
Number 4.
You guys are a real dream team, the two of you together.
Yeah, this is a dream team. What
My
continent
goodness.
did Torrey Craig play in before joining the Denver Nuggets?
Oh.
I can't remember.
No one said there were going to be Torrey Craig questions.
Wasn't this one?
Oh, he's out.
Go back to the Avs, guys.
So close. It was Australia. He comes from the NBL, right? The Australian
The
League.
I couldn't remember.
He was a dominant Australian basketball player.
He also did play in New Zealand, but his last stop before the NBA was
Oh, that's right. Is it the
Australia.
Breakers in New Zealand? I think?
Yeah, New Zealand.
Oh, they're
Breakers.
going to be so proud of me in Australia. Shouts to Australia. Yeah, he witnessed a kangaroo fight. He has never done a shoey. Neither have I, apparently. I mean, we have to do this. Will be a thing where if the Nuggets win a championship, we're all doing shoeys. That's
I'll
just the
find
rule.
a different way to celebrate.
What's it? Wait, what's a shoey? I don't even know what this is.
It's really intuitive.
It's where you apparently
You drink out of a shoe?
Yeah, you pour your beer into not a shoe, your shoe. You take your shoe off, you pour your beer into it, and then you chug it from your shoe.
Yeah, that's good.
Not
So I'm not
for
doing
me.
that.
And
I'm
then you
not doing
put your
that
shoe
either.
back on and just like go about your life.
Yeah, that sounds like ruining
Hilarious.
2 parts of your night at once. Yeah, you're a sloppy sock the whole rest of the night.
I love. You don't know this, Dave, but our following at DNVR Nuggets is like 90% Americans, but the other 10% is like 9 of that 10% is Australians and Serbians. So
Those are
we
our
have
people.
Those are our people.
Why
We
are
are
the
welcome.
Australians?
I
They
don't
love
know.
the mellow era Nuggets for some reason. We can't
That's
figure it
funny.
out. Isn't
Yeah.
it funny?
Funny.
It's pretty funny.
All right, guys. I think we're out of gas for tonight. We haven't locked in that guest yet for tomorrow, so that announcement's still to come. But we'll be on tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. Every Monday through Thursday, 8 o'clock. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow night.
Adios, everybody. Good night, Australia. Good morning, Serbia.
All right, this is where we